Everyone, thank you so much for joining with us today. My name is Jeremy Kirby. I am Director of Sales here at Sistine. With me today, of course, we have Stephen Stinchcomb. So he is going to be kind of operating the screen for me. You're going to be looking at a few things. So we are going to be going over how to gather evidence in the field. Steve's going to be actually controlling a device so that you can actually see what it's going to look like and how to gather that evidence in the field as well, which is wonderful. So again, if anyone during the presentation has any questions, we do have that chat feature. Feel free to put them in there. I'll try to get to them as we go along, but if not, we'll wait to the end and go over them there. If for any reason you can't hear, just kind of let me know as well. But thank you guys so much for being here with us today. I always try to get through these as quickly as possible. It's a very important topic, especially nowadays, which in community policing and with what's going on. So we definitely want to go over the topic with you, but I promise we won't keep you guys too long as well, which is important. So just a brief introduction about Sistine. Most of you know who we are, but just in case, Sistine, we're the largest mobile forensic software company that's actually headquartered here in the United States. So not only am I here and our tech support and our customer service is here, but the actual engineers that they design the software and the hardware here as well, which is real special. We are very invested in the communities that we help serve, which is wonderful. And I can't thank all of you enough for doing what you do and helping keep your communities safe. So that's great. So basically going way back when, mobile forensics and everything else was brand new, we were actually the very first mobile forensic software company out there. And what happened is we were the largest data transfer company. So say you had your first flip phone, you wanted to buy your second flip phone, a newer, or even the very first Android that came out, right? But you wanted to transfer your data from one phone to another. You had to use what was called the original DataPilot. It was software found in Best Buy. We sold about 6 to 8 million of those things all over the US. So it was real neat. But because of that knowledge, that pioneering knowledge in data transfer and data collection, we were able to pioneer that into the forensic scene by making the normal data collection then forensically sound. So we'll kind of go over, that's kind of how, when we want to talk about how the evidence will hold up in court, we'll talk about that a little further as well for you. But without further ado, I think we'll kind of jump right into things. Just an outline of what we're going to be going over today. We are going to go over some of the use cases. So it's not just about collecting or what evidence to collect in the field. It's also about the different use cases that are out there, because the evidence that you're going to collect, although most of the time will remain the same, there are a few instances where you might be looking for something different. We want to go over that with you. Of course, we're going to be going over the 4 most important pieces of evidence data to always collect on scene. And then, of course, how that data is going to hold up in court, how you're going to present it, right? And then we'll also go over a little bit about the tool that we are going to use today. We are using the brand new DataPilot 10, which is great. I love it because it is an affordable tool so that agencies can disperse them throughout their coverage areas. That's important because, again, with today's policing, less information is being gathered in the lab. More evidence is now being gathered in the field. And you don't want to bring a $10,000 to $15,000 tool out with you in the field on a daily basis. You want that back in the lab. You want an affordable $1,500, $2,000 tool that you can spread out throughout there. And there's a few of them out there, but we'll be using the data today, which is wonderful. And I know a few people are joining us now. So are just joining, you haven't missed much. Went through the kind of the history of the tool, and now we'll kind of jump into the use cases, guys. So again, thank you all so much for being with us here today, and we'll go ahead and get started for you. Okay, so again, I do want to talk about the different type of data, why you're kind of collecting it there, all right? So in the event of a major incident, which is something that we're seeing more of, unfortunately, here in the US, or even a traffic collision, something as simple as that, there's usually 3 different yet very important groups that we do want to pull data from, okay? So there's different type of cases, but they all interact fairly the same with the evidence. So the first group of people, or the first type of basically a use case that we are going to acquire data from is going to be the suspect. That's the first person that comes to mind if you're out in the field and you're trying to acquire evidence data. The thing that you always think of out there is our suspect, right? So you always hear about grabbing data from them. Now, data from the suspect is paramount in any investigation. Why? Well, because obviously it's going to help you with establishing a motive. It's going to help you find the proof of evidence. So you always want to make sure that you're grabbing evidence from that suspect first and foremost. But some of the people we tend to forget about as far as acquiring data in the field are going to be the victim, right? So that's the second person. So evidence data gathered on scene from a victim is equally important. It could give us great insight into the incident. So an example would be, say it's a stalking case. Well, you're always going to grab that evidence data from your suspect. You're going to most likely find pictures on his phone of the person he's stalking, maybe some text messages, but you always want to be able to corroborate that evidence, right? So you want to grab that the victim's data as well. So that's very important too. And that way you're corroborating the two stories. Now, thirdly, and this is the type of person that we're just now, because of the invention of tools like the DataPilot and others, we're just now really grabbing on scene, is the witness. Okay, so with the witness, evidence data collected on scene from witnesses is usually overlooked. The reason why is because most of your SOPs, most of your standard operating procedures in a lot of your agencies right now, unless you're a private investigator with us right now, is you're going to want to grab a phone, you're going to bring it back to the lab, right? They always say, okay, grab the digital evidence, grab that phone, bring it back to the lab and acquire. Well, witnesses, they're a fickle bunch, right? We all know that. They might not have any problem with you grabbing say a picture of the crime that occurred, the mass casualty event. If I'm at a mass casualty, they might not, they'll probably allow you to grab a picture, a video, text messages, something right away. But the problem there wherein lies when you tell them, okay, I have to bring your phone back to the lab. And then, of course, you're usually going to not lie, but you're going to exaggerate. You're going to say, oh, yeah, we can get it back to you in a few hours. We all know that's not the case. You're going to take their phone. You're going to do a full dump. It's going to wait in line with the rest of the phones. It's going to take you at least 10 to 12 hours, if not days, and in some cases, weeks. We all know that's the current kind of SOP. And the problem is when you tell that to a witness, well, guess what? Their consent is going to go from 100% down to maybe 20%. Whereas if you can gather that evidence from them instantly, then right there in front of them, right? While they're watching you, now they're not going to have as much of a problem with you gathering that evidence because they know, hey, I can watch this officer, I can watch this deputy. He's just grabbing these few videos or these few pictures. They feel good about it. You have your chain of custody because of how you're acquiring it, and then you can let them go on their business. That's a huge new jump in technology in law enforcement, whether we realize it or not. Because in the past, you're forcing them to take their phone or you're requiring consent from them, but consent that's going to need to last weeks because it might take weeks for you to work on that phone. So keep that in mind. And we'll get to more of that later as well. Okay, so rather than just letting me talk, because I will talk for hours, and I want you guys to actually see kind of how we're acquiring this evidence in the field, I'm going to have Steve, who's helping us out, I'm going to have him kind of share his screen, and you're actually going to see what it would look like to acquire some of this evidence in the field. So I'll give him a minute to do that, and then we'll continue on. Awesome. So while he gets that set up, what you are looking at here would be the brand new DataPilot 10. This is created by us here at Sistine. It was designed specifically to get access to evidence instantly on the scene, not back in the lab. You can use it in the lab, of course, but a lot of your agencies probably already have a security software, or a Cellebrite, or a magnet. That's great back in the lab, but this is specifically used on scene. It's an affordable product, so it's less than $1,500. That's great for budgets, and it's very easy to be used. So it's very easy so that any frontline guy or gal can use it out there in the field and go from there. We call it, it's just an easy to use device. Now, some of you might also have, say, other software you want to add, you want to put it on like something like that. You want to use that in the field. That's wonderful. That's great. We'll go over how to acquire that evidence, but this field device to be able to acquire. All right, awesome. So give me 1 second here. Stinch is just gonna, Steven is just gonna put in some information on there on how to get to the case, that type of thing. So there are 4 must-have evidence types collected for mobile devices on the scene, okay? That's what we wanna go over today. First one that we are gonna go over, and again, these can, my list of how we're going over them can change on either case. So the first one I'm going to go over today might be images. That's going to be images and videos. Some of you might want to grab texts first. However it amounts to your case, that's what you're going after. So these are in no particular order. So the first thing that we want to do is we always want to try to grab images and videos off of a digital evidence device. And we want to do that as quickly as possible. So most of this evidence data is going to be found in the camera function of the device, of the phone. Some of it is going to be stored in apps. So some people will take pictures in WhatsApp, Snapchat, something like that. So they're going to be stored there. We'll actually get to those type of images and videos later when we go after application data. But for now, I'm going to show you how to instantly pull the image data off of a mobile device. We're going to use the DataPilot again, field triage device that you guys can see how it works. And we're going to run what's called a flex acquisition. So just for those of you that don't know, DataPilot, they are part of the NCFI. If some of you have ever gone through NCFI, it's a Secret Service training facility out there in Alabama. They are going to be part of their brand new first responder course. So if you guys are planning on trying to attend, you're automatically going to get one of these. So that's very exciting. Or they are available through us as well, which is wonderful. So first off, while Steve is setting up, obviously, the device, and we'll kind of go over what he's doing here in a little bit more detail in just a moment. Basically, some of you might not have a device, but you still want to get photographic evidence. If you have a camera, theoretically, you can take pictures of the evidence on the actual phone. There's one thing that I want to warn you about, though, when you're doing that. And again, what Steve is doing is he's actually acquiring data. He's going to acquire some image data right now. And what's happening is he's showing you how fast it's now ability to capture those videos off of the device with the DataPilot. So you can see how fast it's moving. But say you don't have access to a DataPilot, or you don't have access to a laptop with, like, say, Magnet on it or Secure View, something like that, but you do have an actual camera, you can take pictures of the actual phone screen, and then maybe when you get back in the lab, you can throw it into some OCR software, that type of thing. But very important, if you are going to use that, that photographic device, a digital camera, something like that, keep in mind, guys, that you are going to want to make sure that the SD card in that camera is not removed at all. That is something that can be seen. This is for chain of custody purposes. So make sure you're never removing that SD card from that camera. When you're going to, say, dump the photos that you took, do it from your laptop straight into that digital camera to remove the photos. These are just tips for you on, of course, chain of custody, that type of thing. It's why it's great to have a device like the DataPilot is that it's pulling that data off, but it's hashing everything so that it's creating a chain of custody for you so that when you are going to court, you'll be able to provide everything. And we'll go over that kind of at the end about how and why it's important to hold up in court as well. I have heard of some law enforcement agencies using their own cell phones to snap pictures of stuff. I know a few correctional agencies that do that. Very important. Not so smart because it's on a phone, and in layman's terms, it's very easy for a defense to rip that apart. Because there's very little chain of custody if someone's taking that picture with their own phone of the evidence. B, what are they doing with that picture when they get it on their own phone? Are they taking it home? That's outside of jurisdiction, that type of thing. and again, just hasn't been tampered with. So very important, trying not to use another phone camera to be able to take evidence off of a cell phone. Try to use a device like the DataPilot. If you must use an actual camera to take pictures of that evidence, again, just take some steps to make sure that you are ensuring that the SD card is never, removed from that thing. Make sure that it never leaves the squad car back to the actual precinct. So there's a few things that you want to keep in mind there as well. So Steve, again, he's demonstrating the Flex acquisition of the DataPilot. What the Flex acquisition allows you to do with this device, it's brand new technology that allows you to only acquire the evidence that you need. Okay, so why is that important? If you only need photographic evidence right now, just pictures, so say you're working with a witness or a victim. So in fact, I'll do a quick little story. Like I said, I can talk forever. We work obviously with a lot of human trafficking agencies, crime against children, ICAC, that type of thing. And we were told a lot of these human trafficking agencies want to try to help these people that are being trafficked. But the problem is, and they all have cell phones, the problem is a lot of those people, the same people that are being trafficked, people are trying to help, they are also involved with other crimes. So they might also be involved with dealing drugs, obviously prostitution, that type of thing. So it's very hard to convince the person that they're trying to help to hand over their phone so that they can get some of the pimp's information, the people that are trafficking them's information. But with a Flex acquisition, you can literally tell them, look, I'm only going to pull this evidence from your phone. I'm going to do it right in front of you so that you can see the data that I'm pulling off. You don't have to worry about me making a case about you selling drugs or about you selling your body. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to put the bad guys, the guys that are forcing you to do these things, I'm trying to get evidence against them. So the Flex acquisition is great because you can choose literally what you want to pull off of that device, whether it be pictures, whether it be text, whether it be application data, all of that type of stuff, which is wonderful. So that's great as well. Flex acquisition is great, of course, for the if you're ever involved with some type of a mass casualty event. We just helped out with one in California here lately. You always want to make sure, again, if you have, say, 100 people that are taking pictures or photographic evidence of the same type of event, then again, you don't want to try to get those 100 phones and bring them back. It's great if you can, but it's very hard for you to do. Whereas if you're an agency that has a few of the DataPilot devices, you can have these out there pulling that data, and you can do that right there on scene, which is very important as well. So again, you pull the data, you pull it off, you give the phone back to them, you let them go about their business, but right now you have that evidence under chain of custody that you can use, which is wonderful. So that's very good. So I'm going to take a sip of water while it's finishing up there so that you guys can kind of take a look. And then we're going to jump into text messages, which would be our next most important piece of evidence that we want to acquire out there in the field.
So while Jeremy is taking a sip of water, I wanted to also go over the choices I made when I was doing this acquisition. I chose basically all the files on the device, so all the pictures and videos. And as you can see, it's done with the phone now, and I can unhook that phone and save some battery. And now I've got a completed acquisition here.
What's great about that, guys, keep in mind that took less than 10 minutes. Those of you that are in forensics right now, you know that normally to get that to that data, you have to do a full dump of a phone or a digital device, and that's usually 4 to 8 hours to pull that data. Because the way it's currently done in the lab is it's pulling all information, whereas we have kind of sped up that process to be able to give you access to it instantly, which is awesome. So you can see it pulled 345 files off of that phone just while we were talking. 94 image files, you got some thumbnails, even some video files, guys. So those are very large files and audio files. So all of those were under 10 minutes. So we're not just looking at thumbnails, it's pulling actual videos that were taken. And Stinch is going through them now. So one of the neat things about a field device like this is not only are we able to, of course, pull that evidence, right? We want to pull that evidence. We want to get it back to our lab guys because the lab guys are the guys that are really trained on how to analyze it. But what if you need to make an instant decision out in the field, right? You still want to be able to view that evidence. So what the DataPilot allows you to do is actually view that evidence in real time as you're out in the field so that if you do need to make an actionable, basically decision based on that evidence that you found, you can. It's great for, say, like missing children. So you don't have time to get this information back to that lab. Again, you want to try to get to that evidence quickly. And Steve is showing us basically how to view those files while you're actually out there in the field as well, which is wonderful. Okay, so that is how we were able to pull off images and videos kind of right away. It's going to be different on every device. Again, if you're using traditional software that you might have in the lab and you just put it on a laptop, unfortunately, that's probably still going to take hours for you, but it is important. If you have a device like the DataPilot, which again, you can get through us or you can join some of the federal training centers that are out there that have it as part of their classes. And again, this is literally, guys, this is brand new. First class starts in September for them. You might be able to acquire this through them as well, which is wonderful. That's their goal, is to get these out to first responders, which is great. So there you go. So now the next thing I want to go after is again going to be the text messages. Text messages, why? I mean, we don't need to talk too much. Basically, they should be pulled to prove if a suspect or victim knew each other. That's very important, or even conspired in a case. Okay, so you always want to get those text messages out there. Those text messages, they're paramount to an investigation. So the text, they're going to contain really a treasure trove of data that's going to go back weeks, months, even years, guys, which is great. So text, a lot of people, when we think of text messages, we think of the actual writing, like, hey, bro, how's it going? Good, I'm doing well. That is true. The texts do include that. But a lot of times they have a lot of additional metadata, location info. They're going to contain pictures, right? Like we talked about before. They're going to have some pictures. They're going to have some videos, that type of thing. So we really want to pull that information off of the cell phone. So now keep in mind, again, with your current tools, it's going to take hours back in the lab, but we don't have hours. We have minutes. So again, there's a few things that you can do. Now, Steve is going to set us up with a fast acquisition. This is other new technology that's built to pull text messages and call history. So this is going to pull text messages, call history, even contacts off of the phone. So he's going to select that. While that's going, and then what he's doing now is he's going to do all. So it's going to pull all of them off of that phone. While we're also doing that, this is another example where if you need just a cheap way, a real cheap way of pulling data off of phones quickly, get with that digital camera. Again, theoretically, you can take pictures of that evidence screen right there and try to hold that up in court as chain of custody. But just again, make sure with that camera, guys, that that's the problem with the digital cameras, and a lot of people are trying to use them out in the field because obviously it is an affordable solution. To take pictures of evidence is there's no real way of showing in court that taken off of that camera somehow and tampered with. There's no hash values. There's nothing else. So it is easier for a defense to be able to take it apart. It is now. It's great if you're working on. You have a consent case. You're working with a witness. You're working with maybe even the victim themselves. It can help out with a little bit, but it's a little tough for you. So Steve, what he did is he literally just pulled every text message off of this phone. Sorry, that was extremely fast. He was able to get it. What was that? Seconds. So he those text messages in seconds. We've run tests where we got 17,000 text messages in 8 minutes. So it's it's a very quick process. Again, this is all brand new technology that you're going to be seeing with the DataPilot 10. which is wonderful. So again, that the main thing is getting to that evidence quickly. So now why this is great as well, and what texts are being used for more and more. There's a traffic accident. Say there's a very large traffic accident. You might get both parties or multiple parties to cooperate and give permission to look at their phones to see if they were texting while driving. I do know we've all heard certain states, New York and Michigan, are trying to pass state laws where if there is a traffic accident, you must give away or you must give up your phone to be looked at immediately to see if you were texting while driving. I'm not going to get into the implications of that, but if that is one of your states, California's thinking about it as well. If that is one of your states, then this is perfect to be able to see that information. So you can see if they were on their phone while they were driving and causing that accident. So if giving authorization, you can easily use that DataPilot to see if they were texted or texting while operating their motor vehicle. So someone brought up a great question. This is why devices like DataPilots were created. What if the target device is password protected? Well, you have the person with you in the field. If it is a witness, it's not passcode protected. If it is a victim and obviously they are able to assist you with their passcode, that phone is no longer passcode protected. If it is the suspect, you're most likely going to need a warrant as well. If it's a suspect, it's up to them. There are no passcode breaking abilities built into the device. That's not what it is built for. There are $30,000 devices you can buy for your lab. We all know who they are. That if you really need that, you can. But the reason why something like this was created is because for $1,500 or more, if you're looking at other products out there as well, up to $8,000 if you want to, again, load 4 PC on a laptop and take it out, something like that. The ability to be able to get this out in the field is paramount because more phones are being locked, guys. And if you can get to them while they're out in the field, they're not locked. People always say, well, what if it's protected? Well, if you're doing a warrant search, if you already have a warrant, you're knocking down a door, you're knocking on doors. Guess what? Everyone is always on their cell phones, right? If they're on their cell phone, it is not password protected. One of the things that we had to basically retrain agencies how to do. So right now, some of you might currently knock on doors, some of you might currently do warrants, serve warrants, that type of thing. You're trained right now. If someone has a cell phone, you immediately grab that cell phone from them. You do not let them on that cell phone, right? That's how you're trained. We are actually changing that procedure. Agencies are actually changing that. Reason why is because if you're doing a warrant search and you leave them in possession of their phone, most of the time they're texting their girlfriend, they're texting their buddies, they're texting them saying, hey, I just got jammed up. Police have me here. Guess what? If they are texting, their phone is unlocked, you can pull that evidence immediately. So keep that in mind as well, which is nice. So what Steve is doing right now is he's actually exporting some of this evidence to an external drive to show how easy it is to be able to pull data from the DataPilot and then onto your computer back in the lab so it can be analyzed by your lab guys. Again, these are frontline stuff like this. These are frontline tools. Normally, we don't want the frontline guys doing much on the analyzing. We want to get the analyzing process back to the lab guys because they've done a lot of training. There's some great certifications. NCE, IASIS has some great certs out there. They know what they're doing, but we do want to be able to acquire that evidence quickly. So there you go. So there you are. So that's kind of how to pull text messages and the call history. You can do it the same way on that DataPilot by doing the fast acquisition. But I do want to go over call history real fast. Call history, it's often overlooked. It really is. It's one of the things that we think of the least, but it's very important. It always, of course, gives you a list of the known associates, so the people that they're talking to. It also gives you the ability, of course, to contact, this is a sad one, to contact next of kin in dire situations. So whether they've passed on or they are, they have no ability to, to something like that. They're in a coma, they're induced, something in that regards. You can get next of kin by pulling their actual call history and the contacts out of the phone. So the same acquisition we just did for the text messages, that will pull that call history as well. So keep that in mind. So you can get that entire call history very quickly, which is what we like. Steve, I'm not sure if you had something there that you wanted to add, and if not, we'll kind of jump into the application data.
Yeah, I can show you that call history real quick just while you were talking about it there. Give me a sec.
Perfect.
So if you look, when we grab that, we got the contacts and call history as well as those text messages. So I can go under call history and see all of that. And this particular device has a great reporting tool that is free to download for your PC so that you can go through these files and sort them and see them in different formats. And it's really great for handling evidence, creating a PDF of them, those kinds of things. So that comes with this particular tool.
Right on. Thank you, Steve. We appreciate that. Okay, so the next thing that I'd like to go over, number 4 in our 4 most kind of popular, the most important really forms of evidence that you want to pull out there in the field on scene to help you guys out, of course, is going to be the application data. Now, application data is interesting. It's kind of a one word fits all because everything on that cell phone can really be considered an app, right? So we talk about text messages, and most people will use, if it's an iPhone, you're going to use iMessage. If it's an Android, you're using the normal native Android application for text messages. But there's other things, right? There's WhatsApp, there's Snapchat, there's Facebook Messenger. There's all the other things that people use as texting devices, texting applications, and even ways of sharing pictures. So there is, and Steve is going to go over what we call kind of link screen mirroring. This is what kind of set the industry in mobile forensics ablaze about a year ago when we pioneered it. Link screen is amazing. The reason why is because applications, there are new apps out every day. Forensic companies, it's very hard for us to keep up with every new app that comes out on a daily basis. Not to mention every update that Facebook does, that WhatsApp does, that Vibe does, that all these tools do. Every time they update, we have to test our software to make sure, in the past, to make sure that we could still acquire evidence from that. And again, it would take hours to acquire that evidence. But about a year ago, we created something called link screen mirroring. This is real neat. There are a few, just for the instance, to make sure I'm helping everyone out. We want this to kind of be, tool agnostic, so to speak. There are a few open source tools that will help with some of this. None that will quite do exactly what DataPilot can do. That's why we're showing you the DataPilot today. Like this one works on both Androids and iPhones. New technology allows auto scrolling. It's insane what this technology can do. Open source ones will kind of let you view, but they don't quite have the same features. But let me tell you about this. So literally what's happening right now is any bit of evidence that you see on that Android phone, any evidence that you see, or iPhone, I think Steve's using an Android there. Any bit of evidence, it will mimic on the actual screen of the DataPilot and will allow you to capture that evidence instantly. This is a game changer, guys. This used to take hours, if not days, to run a dump on a 200 gig iPhone. You can now get to this information instantly in the field. So now, why is this so important? Well, I mean, really a bunch of different reasons. But the neat thing is, again, pictures. Say you have one picture that you want to get to quickly. Pull up that picture on the phone, grab it. Say you have text messages, but it's in some encrypted cloud-based application, Snapchat, right? In the past, you couldn't get anything out of Snapchat. Now you can get everything out of Snapchat as long as it's on their phone. So if you have access to their phone out there in the field, guys, you are golden, because you can now link screen it, capture it, do the chain of custody, all that good stuff, which is awesome. And you can get that done, which is so cool. So it's real neat to be able to get to that evidence, which is great. I do want to talk about a few different, there he is. So Steve's doing a few different apps there. As you can see, map evidence, picture evidence, text messages, all that type of stuff you can get. So for the first time ever, even encrypted apps, again, like Snapchat or Facebook Messenger that store everything in the cloud, well, guess what? If you're on their phone, you can get to that evidence quickly. So we're very, very happy about that, which is wonderful. I do want to show, and he's going through there so that you guys can kind of do that. That is wonderful. So this allows you to, of course, preserve as much evidence in the field as possible. This is great, again, for the human trafficking cases where maybe you just need a few text messages, maybe you just need a few pictures. You can get to that. But on top of that, why what the DataPilot does is so amazing is it also converts that text that is found in the pictures, that's found in that link screen, back into actual text. It uses OCR technology built in so that the pictures, if that picture contains text, like that one on there, Steve, on the left-hand side, you're taking pictures of the thought bubbles, right? It's just a picture. On the right-hand side, it's actually converting it back to text. Why is that important? Because you can immediately run an actual search through any of that text as you would back in the lab. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, I just converted a picture back into, that picture is a picture of text messages. But I really need to read those text messages to see if my missing person's name shows up, if a drug name, cocaine, shows up, if anything shows up in there. So what you can do is you can actually do a keyword search to run through even the pictures. And as you can see, he found it. It highlights it for you right there. So now you can instantly see if there's evidence that you need to get to that's actually in the picture itself, which is awesome. So it's very neat. Now, for some of you, I'm not sure how many federal agencies we have with us here today. A few of the federal agencies are already using it. Everyone has access to this function. But what you guys can also do is you can have preset conditions. So if I'm a drug task force guy, right? I'm working with HIDA and I'm working on drug task forces. I'm already going to have my keywords already listed in there. So I can automatically run those keywords through text messages, call histories, pictures, everything. They might include like common drug names, that type of thing. If I'm Border Patrol, I'm going to have my do not fly list. I'm going to have known terrorist names, keywords, that type of stuff that I'm going to run through all of my evidence data right away every time I dump a new phone, which is very neat.
So I've got one on here already, and it's just got benign terms like school bus and late and those kinds of things, because this is my kid's phone conversation. So it's actually my phone talking to my kid. So it's going to hit on bus and late and words like that. There you go, there's one. So that's the kind of quick search you can do if you had those preloaded on your phone, or on your DataPilot 10 in this case. You can grab that information very fast. And a lot of you have access to drug terms that are up to date and so forth.
Now, Steve actually has, and I know we're going pretty well. We're almost done, but I want Steve actually has a story which he actually helped with out in the field with with a major agency where Steve's located out in Ohio. So yeah, Steve, using link screen. Why don't you go ahead and kind of and let him know about that?
Yeah, basically, I've been talking to the State Highway Patrol main lab here in Columbus, Ohio, where I live. And good guys down there, and they have a lot of gear. They have a substantial budget, so they have all the toys, so to speak. They didn't have this handheld stuff yet. They do now, actually, but they didn't yet. Essentially, I got a call, and they said, hey, we know about your screen grabbing technology on that handheld unit. Can you come down and help us with a case? So I did, and basically it was a federal drug case they were working on. And long and short of it, they could do a complete dump of the phone and grab all the regular data, but what they needed was inside of an encrypted app. So the only way they could access that would be to open it up, put it up on the screen like I did here with that WhatsApp, and essentially grab that imagery. So that's what we did, and the moral of the story is if you're going to buy large quantities of cocaine, don't take pictures of the bags on your coffee table and complain about the weight of the bags. That's a bad idea. So long story short, that's the kind of what happened. It was great. I helped them with their case. It literally took me maybe a half hour that I spent down there helping them out, and they got what they needed, and I was done. That's think about the change that is from the norm, right? So
Yeah,
really great.
Very wonderful. So we talked about the different evidence that obviously that you should be now gathering on scene, basically at every investigation. What I always say is people say, well, I don't get a lot of phones in. I don't get a lot of phones as part of my cases. Look, every case you're working, every case that you will work has a phone associated with it, right? No matter if you acquired a phone or not, every single case that you are going to work, that person or those people had phones that might be pertinent to your case. So that's very important to think of. But I do want to talk about what about the data we don't need. So I'm going to have Steve real fast go back to our Flex acquisition. We don't need to do another one, but I'll just show you in case you guys do acquire the DataPilot from us again, or a federal training center, that type of thing. I want to show you how you can kind of get rid of the evidence that you might not need. That's not pertinent to your case. The reason why too, in some states like California here, unfortunately, we make it as hard as possible on law enforcement sometimes. What I mean by that is a lot of times if you have a warrant, your warrant needs to, it can't just be anymore, hey, I need a warrant to search this guy's phone for evidence against my crime that he committed, blah, blah, blah. You now need to say, I need a warrant to search photographs taken with his phone and text messages. That's it, no other media. And I need to be able to do that between Monday, the 18th of February, and Wednesday, the 20th of April. Something like that. That literally, you need to narrow it down. And what Steve is doing is he's showing on these tools how you can do that. So what he...
That second date, Wednesday the what?
Well, maybe I was just kind of picking randoms, but right. As you see, you can kind of go through and you can choose the evidence, only the evidence that you need that's pertinent to your case, and then you can even choose the exact date, and then guys, even the exact time nowadays. And again, this is important. It's also important if you want to pull, say there's a witness and they might have 100 files that you need, but you know all of those files, all those pictures were taken on the same day, but they don't want you to have access to any of their other pictures. So A, you can use that link screen we just showed you and do screenshots. Or B, if there's a lot of them, you can come back here and choose the last 30 minutes, 1 hour, the last 24 hours, the last 48 hours, or that exact day. So you can say all those pictures were taken on Wednesday. I'm going to take all those pictures on Wednesday, and I'm going to grab all those files off for my evidence. So it's real neat. The new technology that's making things faster and easier to use. It's not just helping the lab guys, because lab guys love it now because they have more access to evidence quickly, but it's helping you guys to actually be able to utilize this in the field, which is wonderful. So again, that's a Flex acquisition. Now you can see all the file types that you can pull. So if you don't need stuff, you don't need a calendar, don't pull it. It's going to speed up the process. If you don't need text messages, you can't legally get text messages on your warrant or whatnot, do not pull them. You don't need to any longer. So it's real neat because it speeds up your acquisition times. It speeds up the process, and it's all about getting to that evidence in 10 minutes instead of 10 hours or 10 days or 10 weeks. So it's real neat, everyone. So that's talking about the evidence that we don't need, okay? So that's important. Okay, so kind of moving along, and I don't want to take up too much of everyone's time, we do want to talk about, now that we have our evidence, what the heck can we do with it, right? So I got the evidence off the phone. I have the pictures, I have text messages, but now what? So there's a few things. Steve already showed you. You can actually view that evidence right on scene. So you can go to, we see acquire and we see reports. You can go to reports and you can actually view that evidence right on scene and thumb through it right then and there. So that, again, if it's a mass shooting, God forbid, or you're working a missing child or an abduction, you can get to that evidence immediately, make your, thumb through it, and go from there. You can make actionable decisions right then and there, which is wonderful. You can keyword search it, all that good stuff you have access to. Now, there's also a free tool that we actually developed for you guys. when we are done, we are going to be reaching out to everyone after the webinar. I think Steve might actually have it on his desktop, so I might have him pull it up. But we will get this to everyone. So whether you have DataPilot or not, we want you guys to have this report, this function. And the reason why is because even if you might not have Secure View or DataPilot with your agency, chances are an agency next to you might or will in the future. And this way you can actually share the evidence back and forth and view it. And this is completely free. Why I love this as well is, say you're a medium-sized agency, you might only need, say you have 100 sworn, you might only need 5 data pilots in your covered area. I have large agencies that have 50 to 100 of them. Say you're a medium-sized agency, you want 5 of these out, and maybe all patrol sergeants, you have 1 for drug task force, 1 for human trafficking, something like that. But you want 10 additional people to be able to view the data. You can pass this, what's called DataPilot desktop, around so that you can view any of the evidence data that's been found. Not only there, we are going to go into, of course, how things hold up in court, that type of thing. There's a hash checker built in. Hash checker is, again, this is what makes the evidence basically hold up in court for you. A hash is basically, it's proving that the evidence that you acquired off the phone is exactly the same. The evidence that you're bringing to court is exactly the same as the evidence that's actually on that phone. There's, again, you can go through certified training that gives you the nuts and bolts of it. I'm doing a high level thing, but basically these hash values are how we show that the evidence hasn't been tampered with in any way. You accidentally changed a picture, if you accidentally deleted a text message, if you accidentally did that, something is not going to match up, and you're going to get a big red X instead of a nice green hash on there, which is important. So while it is going through the hashes, I'll talk about a little bit more about the free software, kind of what it can do as well. It will also parse iTunes backup files. That's free. Guys, that's an insane thing to be able to do. And that hash checker is popping up right now. So as you can see, all of our evidence holds up. So all the evidence that we talk off of that phone, off that digital device, everything's a green check mark, which means you can give this to the prosecuting attorney, you can give this to the district attorney, anything like that, so that they can go ahead and ensure that your case, the evidence that you are providing them, is exactly how it appeared on the suspect's phone, so that they can't, pick you apart in court, basically, which is wonderful. So there you go. So also, and Steve, do you want to open up maybe a report? I don't know if you have one, that just so that they can view it. This will parse evidence from iTunes backups. So if you're on the scene, maybe your suspect doesn't have a phone, but you have their computer, and they've attached their phone to iTunes. You can actually grab that iTunes backup folder, the file, directly off the computer, throw it on a disk drive, throw it on that DataPilot, bring it back to the office, and then you can actually open it and parse it. You can open it and parse it directly with this DataPilot desktop, which is amazing, so that it'll pull that data directly out there. So that's great. So Steve, I'll let you, if you want to real fast, just kind of go over, the evidence that you're showing them real fast. Please do.
So this is a text message conversation. This is my kid's phone. So text message conversations back and forth. But I wanted to show you that here's an embedded image in the text message conversation. Those are live. So I can click on that and see the image and see if that's relevant. So that kind of capability is built right into this software. And again, we're just giving this away for anyone who's going to be viewing files from the handheld unit, which is great. It also has, obviously, you can go under some more expansive information under files. There's a lot here. I want to show you like video files. And these are basically, if I click on this, it's going to play it on the default video player on my PC, and I can see what that video was about. And I can see that it was in the camera folder, so I know that that's where it came from. I can also see that this is not relevant because this is from Angry Birds. This is inside that app. So not pertinent to my case, obviously. So very quick, I can show you things like your images. You're going to get some images that are built into games, of course, but then it's very easy to tell, again, by the way we display it. You can see this came from the camera folder here.
And notice that underneath that line where it says the file, that's your file path. That's how you acquired the image. Do you guys see all those things down below, MD5, SHA-1, SHA-256, those are all hash values that are hashing that picture, again, for court purposes. So we want to show that chain of custody. So yeah, thank you, Steve. That's wonderful. And then even the modified date. So you can see normally when that picture was acquired is what that would be. So you can see it was acquired January 22nd, 2019, 8:29 p.m. a.m. actually. So there you are. It's military time. So there you go. So that's wonderful. So that's one of the important things. It's why a lot of people, you guys, you can acquire the same evidence in the field, say even with the digital camera by taking pictures, but you really want to make sure that it upholds in court. And that's why the hashes are so important. And you can't hash those digital cameras, right? You can say, yes, this digital, an affidavit. I took a picture of the evidence. I put the camera in my squad car. I went back from my car back to the office. I moved it in at this time. I checked the evidence in at this time. So there are options for you. Just be very careful when doing stuff like that. You do want to make sure you have as much chain of custody evidence as possible. And that's why a tool like the DataPilot, where it's still affordable, but it will hash everything for you, is so important, which is great because you can prove when the evidence was taken, how the evidence was transported, and then how that evidence left the device to be then sent on to a PDF and everything else, which is wonderful.
And you can see, I wanted to point this out as well. This is the screen grab method that we've illustrated today. But that device that we were showing you also has a camera built in. So you can use the camera method if you have no data connection with the device. Maybe it doesn't have an active port that works. Maybe it's got maybe it's just a really basic phone from your prepaid company that doesn't even have a data connection. So I can go and grab screenshots from those too. It's not quite as clean, so it doesn't get quite as much translated, but it does still grab that image very well.
So that's taken with the actual optical lens that's included on the DataPilot device. It does have an actual digital camera built into it.
Right.
And what's great about that digital camera is it's stored inside the device. So there's no worries about the actual SD card getting lost or going missing. It makes it a lot harder for the defense attorneys to pick apart your case, basically.
Yep. So you can see, I mean, it's not quite as clean as doing it obviously with a digital connection, but both methodologies operate the same. You can see what you're doing. And it's really we've also heard some great innovations that some of our field folks have done. One of the detectives I work with, he is also taking a picture of, if he finds a phone on the scene, he uses the camera to take a shot of where it was and includes that in the same report. So that's a cool thing.
That's a great thing to bring up. We've also had users that will use the camera to even take a picture of the actual, say, witness or victim holding the phone. So there's a lot of stuff, for proof of that they're giving consent, that type of thing. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do out there that you guys want to consider, which is great. Now, one thing I want to bring up, which is a little scary, there are a few apps out there that law enforcement agencies are, again, adding to their own cell phone to be able to use the pictures, off their own cell phone and take cameras. Try not to do something like that, because if you are going to put that in, well, then the defense attorney can go ahead and, of course, ask, they can subpoena your own personal phone. You don't want your own personal phone obviously getting up there on the stand. That could end very badly for you. So please keep that in mind about doing something like that, which is great. So lastly, guys, unless Steve, was there anything else that you wanted to mention on the pictures or on this?
I just want to really quickly notice that you got the export to PDF on all these files. So the quick and easy way to hand it off, right? So you can create a PDF report of whatever you just looked at and send it off to whoever needs it. So they made that very simplistic. This is probably the easiest to use app I've ever seen.
Awesome. Thank you. So that's wonderful. So again, gone are the days of handling the digital evidence in the lab as far as acquiring it. Lab guys, we still want them to analyze it. There's still, just because we have the evidence, there's still hours and there's still, a great amount of actual analyzing to be done later on back in the lab. So this isn't taking from them. This is something that's helping the lab guys out. But with the mass casualty events, they're happening at an alarming rate. Obviously, the amount of witnesses with cell phone evidence, a lot of times it's a make or break addition to your case, or it should be. So by using any device like the DataPilot, you really can capture data from hundreds of phones, basically in hours, guys, instead of days, weeks, or even months sometimes. Probation and parole offices, they now can finally have access to the parolees' phones actually in the field instead of having to bring them back into the, back into their to their lab. Traffic accidents due to texting, obviously we're seeing these everywhere. I just passed one actually this morning. So where we actually saw it. So officers now have access to this digital triage tool that can kind of either prove someone was or was not texting while driving at the time of the accident. Now, again, that's where legal. A lot of states, you're not at that point yet where you can search their phones for that opportunity, but in a few states, you're about to be. And again, I'll reserve my judgment on that either way. So again, lastly, when we're extracting that evidence data in the field, just always keep in mind the data you are acquiring today can easily be analyzed back in the lab at a later date. So if you have access to a DataPilot, you might not know if that evidence is ever going to be needed, but if they give you permission, if they give you consent, the neat thing is that with the DataPilot, you can acquire that evidence immediately and then bring it back to your lab for a later date. That's important because one of the things we're starting to see more and more is suspects are giving you their consent. Second, they're getting back and they're lawyering up. The lawyer is withdrawing that consent. The problem is once the lawyer can, or once a suspect after talking to a lawyer withdraws their consent, you can no longer acquire that evidence. And most of the time, if you're taking it back to the lab, well, you haven't done the acquisition yet. Whereas they can withdraw their consent, but if you've already acquired that evidence, it's already able to be used, which is wonderful. So you are the first responder in the field. You're the first line of defense, and then you become that first line of offense. You want to be able to acquire this evidence as quickly as possible and get access to that evidence on scene. You can really take your time later on to fully analyze it as well, which is nice. So that's great. So if anyone obviously has any questions, we'll be happy to kind of answer them on chat. I do, before everyone leaves, I always want to take a moment, guys, and I'm sure Steve will have something he'd like to say as well, but just thank you all so much. Whether you're in law enforcement, government agency with us here today, or you're even on the privatized side of things, everything that we do to help make your lives easier, we do to help keep our communities safe. And obviously it's because what you guys do in those communities that keeps our where we live, nice places to live. We can't thank you guys enough for that. We really appreciate everything that you guys do. We are here for you. We're here in the U.S. We live in the communities that we serve. So thank you guys for being with us. Now, we do have a recording of today's actual webinar. So if you would like to share it with anyone else within your agency, please do. We will be contacting you. So if you do want access to something like DataPilot Desktop, that's that free tool that at least allows you to view the evidence. You can get access to it. And lastly, we do have a pilot program. We have a pilot program for some agencies so that normally larger agencies or any agencies, when they're purchasing the DataPilots, we usually have them purchase in quantities of 5 or higher because the and why they're so affordable at under $1,500, they're able to get at least 5 of those out in the field. We do have a pilot program for smaller agencies or even large ones that maybe want to test 2 or 3 of them instead of starting with 5. We do have that available to help you guys out as well, especially if you're a smaller agency. It's a chance for you to acquire 1 or 2 of them without having to purchase 5 of them at a time. So guys will be happy to go over that with you as well. So for myself, I can't thank you enough for being with us here today, guys. We would love to help you guys out further. Steve, if there's anything you'd like to add, please do, and we'll let everyone go back and help their communities there.
Well, as I alluded to, I'm actually in the Midwest, so if you're out this direction, please look me up. And I'm sure my information will be included in some of the notes, but absolutely, I've gone out and helped people in the field with this device a lot. Just because of my location, there's a lot of need around us, and it's really been great so far. So definitely, if you have questions about using these things in the field, please let me know. Like I said, I've done some and have some experience to draw from. So Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the work you folks do, and having worked side by side with a few, I get a feel for what it's like, and I empathize. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you guys. And again, one of the benefits of us being located here in the United States and the software created here is we're very quick to help you guys out with your needs that are changing obviously daily. Like Steve said, he's out in the Midwest. I have Joey, who's out on the East Coast. So if anyone's out on the East Coast, you'd like him to come out and do a presentation, Steve as well, we'd be happy to. We have people on the West Coast as well. So again, we are here to help you guys out. And we love what you guys do. Thank you, everyone. You all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.